a cloud in the sky. Extremely testing conditions today. I'm Matt Stevens. I'm joined by Brian Smith. Brian, this is going to be set fair for quite an amazing stage, I think.
Well, if it's similar to Stage 7 last year in the Amgen Tour of California, it's going to be a cracker when it finished up the Mount Diablo. So we're expecting fireworks when we get there. The gap is, the maximum gap they had was just over 6 minutes, 6 minutes and 25 seconds. But it's been a big effort by David Lozano of Novo Nordisk. He's the rider in pretty much the all-white. He's just coming through on the right-hand side in second place, and he took a long time to come across to these 7 riders in front. So the temperatures are over 30 degrees, so it's a difficult day for all, but obviously everybody's sitting back after the time trial yesterday. Bradley Wiggins has got a good lead and everybody else. He has to keep a close eye on Rowan Dennis, obviously, of Garmin Sharp, but they also have a very good team. A stage win is up for grabs, but it does look as if Bradley is come here with intent to win this. He won the time trial hands down, very comfortably. In fact, I don't think he expected to win it by so much. This is Rowan Dennis now. He fell off in the first stage in the crosswinds. You can just see the bandage on his knee there. Hurt his shoulder as well, but what a terrific effort he made yesterday, Matt, in bouncing back and coming and you know, was the best of the rest, shall we say, at 44 seconds to the flying British rider Bradley Wiggins.
Yeah, it was a very brave effort. Of course, we know he came off at speed in stage 1 in that stage that was split in the crosswinds on the run into Sacramento, but bravely and gamely got back in, fought his way back to the front. There was a very interesting split on that particular day. Some fantastic racing on the opening stage of this year's Tour of California, of course, but all came together for a bunch sprint won by Mark Cavendish. And Mark Cavendish just nudged outside the top 30 inside the top 30 in the time trial, but still wearing the leader's sprint jersey. But yeah, there is the battle damaged Rowan Dennis, obviously eyeing the climb today. But he's ably backed up by some very notable climbers in Garmin Sharp, in Hania Acevedo, of course, Tom Danielson, and Phil Gaiman. Phil Gaiman, of course, had a very good Tour of San Luis earlier in the year and ended up second overall in that race. So it's got a very solid squad, arguably stronger on the climbs than Team Sky. So it's going to be very interesting how it plays out in the finale. Team Sky is a team full of rouleurs, and I think we're going to see possibly Josh Edmondson, one of the last riders to stay with Brad, and maybe Christian Nays, maybe using the other riders up earlier. But it's going to be a very hard day. The gap now 5 minutes 15 with only 34 miles to go, and 10 miles of that are uphill. So they've got it all to do.
They certainly have, and the Bissell rider in the breakaway, the German 21-year-old, he rode with Rabobank development team for a couple of years, 2012-13. That's Ruben Zepunk. And he's at 2 minutes and 42 seconds off the lead of Bradley Wiggins. Martin Winans, 2:51 off the lead. Then back to Jonathan Clark, the United Healthcare rider, at 5:14. So no big danger for Team Sky, but the thing is, he has to use up his team, as you say. He has to use up the riders in front. He's choosing to ride on the wheel of Christian Knies. He's a very experienced rider. That's number 46, and you see the German colours on his sleeve as a former German champion. So he's a very experienced rider, and sometimes when you're riding like this for a long period of time, as you'll know, Matt, it's sometimes you want an experienced wheel to ride on, because if you've got somebody with a wee bit of inexperience and he switches to the right or left, and all of a sudden you're down, and your hopes of winning this race are over. So he's chosen the right person on his team to sit on. You can just see a couple of riders behind, and they are the climbers of the team. So Bradley's saving them back for the climb, as you say, so it doesn't look as if they are saving 2 riders. But this climb at the end, although it's 15-16% at the top, very difficult, but it's gradual. Average is 5.4%, so it's a nice gradual climb, but we're going to get plenty of attacks, and as I said, if it's anything like last year, it'll be an exciting finish to today's stage.
It certainly will be. Of course, last year, Leopold Koenig of Netap Endura took the stage in a fantastic victory. He's not here this year. This is the second time the race has used this particular climb, but I'm not sure that Sky are going to be too worried about this breakaway. Obviously, the breakaway been out in front all day on a very long stage, already been up one or category climb earlier in the race. And of course, in these sorts of conditions, not only saps your energy, It can be quite difficult to keep the concentration levels up if you don't make sure you get enough fluids on board. If you don't get enough fluids on board, it can be absolutely, well, extremely damaging. I know Bradley Wiggins has already been saying that he's going to keep drinking little and often all day, and he's more worried about the heat than his actual form at the moment. So he sees that the conditions as arguably more critical than the actual climb itself. It's a climb of 5.4% average gradient, a climb that you could say suits Bradley Wiggins' climbing style. But we're going to head to a quick commercial break. Please stay with us to join us for the final part of stage 3 of the Tour of California. Welcome back to stage 3 of the Amgen Tour of California. The yellow jersey wearer at the moment sat at the head of affairs in the bunch. We have an 8-man breakaway with a lead of around 5 minutes. And of course, this is the Queen stage of this Amgen Tour of California this year, finishing the fearsome slopes of Mount Diablo. And of course, Diablo means hell. And in these conditions, it's going to be absolutely hell on wheels. Over 90 degrees out there. Many of the riders in the front group and in the peloton using their full zip jerseys to best effect to try and keep cool. Bradley Wiggins has said in the press conference following his victory in the time trial yesterday that he fears the heat the most. He's going to keep drinking all day long. Will no doubt use his domestiques in the team to drop back to the team vehicles to constantly bring back bottles, because in this sort of heat, if you finally start to feel thirsty as a bike rider in these sorts of conditions, it's generally too late. The body, in terms of its system in relation to dehydration, is quite poor, so you need to not wait until you actually feel the pangs of thirst. You need to keep topping up all day long. So they'll be using quite a light solution of electrolytes, quite a diluted solution of electrolytes, but a touch of electrolytes in their bottles to make sure that you get the maximum absorption through into your system, so the water doesn't essentially just flush out of you. So electrolytes absolutely crucial, and you can see Josh Edmondson there just riding to the left of Bradley Wiggins' back wheel, unzipping his Rafa jersey, just flapping in the gentle breeze to try and give him some sort of respite. And there we have Christian Nies, the vastly experienced German rider, ex-national German road race champion, who I think is going to be one of the main lieutenants for Bradley Wiggins on the slopes of Mount Diablo today. But 31.5 miles to go, the gap still holding at 5 minutes and 10 seconds. I think Bradley Wiggins just thinking of his own race. We did see him earlier on during the break having a bit of a chat with Danny Pate, his American teammate. Danny Pate knows the area very well, as does Dombrowski, young Joseph Dombrowski on the team. He's actually got the 3rd place climb on Strava. If any of you out there use Strava at all, I think he's just used it as training. So he knows the climb very well, but it is quite a steady gradient before it ramps up near the end, so will possibly favour Bradley Wiggins' style. How do you think, Brian, that Team Sky are going to ride this? Because we've seen them all season hit these climbs very, very hard in service of Richie Port earlier in the year. It didn't quite come off for them because of Richie Port's, intermittent and not particularly good form, but are they going to do something similar here, or are they going to leave it to the other teams to attack and follow? Because, of course, there are some quite explosive climbers, and Bradley certainly isn't an explosive climber.
Well, the first climb of the day was a horse category climb. That was topped by Will Rutley. He was the king of the mountains from the first stage, so he took maximum points there, 12 points, so he adds that to his 6 he had the other day. So he's 18, so he'll, by the looks of things, he'll keep that competition jersey. But Danny Pate was having a word with Bradley Wiggins during the break. He's dropped back to the car to get some bottles again to have the communication with the team car. They aren't too concerned with this gap at the moment, just over 5 minutes. The best placed in the front group of 8 is 2 minutes and 42 seconds off the overall lead. They can easily, because the riders have been away pretty much all day in the breakaway, they can easily bring back in the last climb possibly 3-4 minutes. So there's no real danger, but on the front of the peloton for Sky is Luke Rowe, the Welshman, Ian Boswell, and Errol, the Tasmanian. So they're using 3 riders up at this moment in time and just controlling things. If need be, Danny Pate, who's just gone back for bottles, will come up and start to help the chase. It's at the point of balance. Excuse me. It's at the point of balance at this moment in time. If it goes up, if it starts to go up, then Danny Pate will have to be committed, so you have 4 riders chasing 8. But that does leave young Joshua Edmondson and Dombrowski. They are 2 very capable climbers. Again, we don't know what sort of form they're in, and I believe that Max Chiandri said yesterday to one of the members of the press that Sky were kind of inverted commas weak. We certainly looked at it, so I don't think they'll be weak. They'll be strong enough, but I think towards the top you might see the attacks coming, especially by the likes of possibly Netap and Jura. They have got some good riders in this race. They won the stage last year with Leo Koenig, and Alex Sanz Vega is the sports director for this. So he, like last year, they had David De La Cruz in the breakaway. This year they have got Paul Voss, so it's taking the pressure off them. So they just have to sit back and let Sky do all the work. When it comes to the climb, I'm expecting some fireworks from the likes of David De La Cruz, Machado and Jose Mendes. If we look at the result last year, Mendes was up there in 9th when Koenig won it. But the major threat again comes from Garmin Sharp. Acevedo finished 2nd in the stage last year. He won the first stage. If you can remember last year, the heat in the first couple of days in the Tour of California are absolutely extreme. There's people almost collapsing, or they were collapsing off their bikes when Acevedo won that stage. But it's going to be an interesting stage to see, because Garmin Sharp and pretty much all the teams have got something to prove. Now, there's stage wins up for grabs, but it's going to be very difficult to dislodge Bradley Wiggins now that he's got this lead. But they're not going to stop trying, and they have to. There's only today's stage and stage 6. Potentially, there could be a crosswind section later on, like in the first stage, but it's going to be very difficult to dislodge Bradley Wiggins. So they've only got today in stage 6 for the GC contenders. It's kind of lumpy the last stage, but I don't think it's a big GC day. So they have to attack him today, and they have to attack him in Mount Diablo.
I think it's an interesting point you raise, where Max Chiandri seems to think that it's a weakened Sky team. It certainly isn't what you'd call a classic Tour team. There are riders obviously with Tour experience in there, particularly with Christian Nees, but Luke Rowe himself, a wonderful roller, has had a very, very good Spring Classics campaign. Very, very experienced rider for somebody so young. But Bradley Wiggins, of course, is in very, very good form at the moment, vastly experienced. I think back to when he won the Tour de France and the run into the Tour de France, and how many stage races he won back to back by just riding in a very, very controlled manner on the climbs, basically taking the yellow jersey in the time trial thing, holding it. He won't panic. He probably knows, and he's probably looked, he knows the riders are in form. He's going to expect the attacks to come, but given the gradient that we've got, he could probably peg them back, ride at the level he needs to ride, and maybe even afford to lose a handful of seconds on the final run into the finish or the final ramp in the last K. And of course, one rider we haven't mentioned, who I think will figure today, is young Adam Yates, riding on Orica Green Edge, of course, who took out that fantastic solo victory in the stage of the Tour of Turkey to win the race overall. I think he will definitely figure. We saw him get caught in the time trial by Bradley Wiggins yesterday for 2 minutes, but I don't think he'll be too worried about that, because Bradley did take 2 minutes or 1 minute out of most of the field. But Adam Yates, another rider that I think we should put into the mix. But the 2 strong teams for me, definitely Garmin and Netap and Jura.
Yeah, let's not forget Matt Boucher, also
yeah.
BMC with Stettiner, disappointed with his time trial yesterday, so he'll want to try and win a stage. The thing is, a lot of the kind of American sponsored teams, American based teams, will want to try and do something, so it will be fireworks in this last climb. We know the form of Adam Yates with the Presidential Tour of Turkey, but he doesn't have the big power as we've seen yesterday for a time trial, but he can go up this climb no problems. But just touching on Bradley Wiggins, he had 2 goals at the start of the year. The first one was Paris-Roubaix, which he rode. It was always a kind of childhood dream of his to try and ride that race and do well in that race. And I think he, head and shoulders. How many Grand Tour winners, especially Tour de France winners, have finished top 10? He rode tremendously. He has dropped 5 kilos for this race. 5 kilos in a matter of weeks. So that's the dedication that Bradley Wiggins has put in. He wants to come here and win the Amgen Tour of California in its ninth year. So that's the sort of dedication you have to have. It's like the same when he won the Tour and he won the Olympic time trial. That's the dedication, and he's got it back this year.
He certainly has. He's a picture of focus, very confident, relaxed manner at the press conferences. Has been in California for a couple of weeks. There were some certain contractual obligations for him to fulfill, and one of those, of course, was a tour around the Fox studios. but amazingly ripped and cut on his bike. He does look almost like a twig of a man. He's very, very, very skinny indeed, but looks very, very confident.
We're just jealous.
I was never that skinny. But no, he's extremely in very, very good form. And he is the sort of individual that can peak for certain moments. He's done that all of his career for the Olympic Games on the track. Extremely disciplined. He can work to a specific goal. Very bad luck last year. His confidence took a bit of a knock, as is very well documented in the Giro d'Italia. But he's set fair today to perform very, very well. I don't think he's going to win the stage. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think he's going to limit his losses. I think we'll see one of the more aggressive, not aggressive, but one of the more pugnacious climbers take the day. But it'll be interesting to see how long some of Bradley Wiggins' teammates can stay with him, but Josh Edmondson will certainly be up to the task. Has been riding very, very well for the last couple of seasons, maturing each year after coming across from the British Academy, following a very good performance in the Tour of Britain back in 2012. So earned his place on the team and now finds himself in a position where he's going to be looking after Bradley Wiggins. So it will be very interesting to see how many riders he has left at the end, and then how he controls and rides when he's faced with the attacks. And there he is.
I wouldn't discount him for the stage win today. It's he's always full of surprises.
Put your cards on the table. What do you reckon? Who's your man today?
I tell you what, I wouldn't discount Bradley Wiggins, but for me, somebody like Acevedo and Machado are the two main guys here. Rowan Dennis again showed form, but I don't know how he is. His shoulder is and climbing, it gets really 15-16% in the finish. So I think if he's carrying that shoulder under the question mark, but Rowan Dennis. So it's between the three for me, I think.
Okay. I'll put my cards on the table after this commercial break. Join us in a few moments at Eurosport, the home of cycling. Welcome back to stage 3 of the Amgen Tour of California, taking us from San Jose to Mount Diablo and the fearsome mountain top finish. The stage, 108.5 miles or 174.6 kilometers. We have 8 riders in front, 47.1 kilometers to go, and the bunch at just over 5 minutes, being led of course by Team Sky in the service of Sir Bradley Wiggins, who earned the right to wear the yellow jersey by virtue of a very dominating display in the time trial yesterday, where he beat Rowan Dennis by just over 40 seconds. Not many riders managed to come within a minute of Bradley Wiggins in that time trial. Such was this display of power. Look extremely focused as we head to the front of the break. The breakaway consists of Ruben Zepunkt, the German riding on the Bissell team, only 21 years of age. Martin Wyant, the experienced Belgian on Belkin. Jonathan Clark, the Aussie on the United Healthcare team. Paul Voss from NetApp Endura. Robbie Squire from James Hagens. Will Routley, the leader of the King of the Mountains classification at present, riding for Optimum Kelly Benefit Strategies. And Luis Davia on Jelly Belly, but he's riding in the National Champions jersey of Mexico. And the gap still holding at 5 minutes and 5 seconds, despite Sky's efforts riding at the front. But I don't think it's a full-out effort to bring the gap down at the moment. It's more to keep the tempo high so it doesn't go out any further. These 7 escapees, or 8 escapees, sorry, have been out since the flag dropped. Been a very difficult stage, run off in extremely hot conditions, well over 90 degrees. So as well as strength sapping climbs, very difficult weather conditions to contend with. So it's vital that these riders take on lots and lots of fluid. They'll be eating a bit less today, but drinking far more. So a big task for the domestiques in all of the various teams, constantly dropping back. I've no doubt that at this point in the race, as we head towards the last quarter of the stage, some of the team cars are going to be certainly running low on supplies, because these riders will be getting through 12 or 13 bottles, even more today. They'll be constantly sipping at their drinks. And I've mentioned it before, but it was one of the main points in the post-race press conference yesterday from Bradley Wiggins, is that he is very in fear of the weather. He wants to make sure that he gets enough fluid on board. But again, the whole team have been out there for 2 weeks acclimatising these sorts of conditions. Very, very difficult and different than Northern Europe, of course, as we head to the breakaway. All still, Brian, working very, very smoothly together.
Yeah, we only have 7 riders in this front group now. The King of the Mountains leader, who won the HC category climb earlier on today, Will Ridley, is dropped off this breakaway. We had 7. One rider came across, and that was David Lozano of the Novo Nordisk team. And then Will Ridley was unfortunately dropped from the breakaway, but he's got enough points, I would think, because the GC contenders are going to battle it out at the Mount Diablo. So I think he's got enough points now with these 6 points he already had at the start of the stage to keep that jersey. I'll be hoping that anyway, because I don't think this break will stay away, although some of them will be thinking of trying to do that. But 7 riders in front. We have dropped Will Ridley. You can just see chase 1 at 1 minute and 30 seconds. The peloton at 4 minutes and 50 seconds now. So the best placed is the rider at 158. You see him in the Bissell colours, which is predominantly white and red. Ruben Zibont, and it's 2 minutes and 42 seconds. The young German is a development rider, obviously the Bissell development team, run by Axel Merckx. So they have got a good advantage, but you can just see Team Sky have now kind of strung out the peloton ever so slightly, and it looks as if they're starting to put a wee bit more pressure on the peloton.
Yeah, certainly since we've come back on air since the last commercial break, they've shaved 20 seconds off the lead of the breakaway, and you can just see the bunch spread out there in a long, long line as you went through that built-up area, and that just shows that the pressure is slowly being increased at the front of the peloton. We'll run through the list of riders that Bradley Wiggins has at his disposal. As we see, it looks like there has been a crash here. It looks like one of the Bissell riders has come to grief, just holding himself. Get the number. He's obviously cut his elbow there. Quite nice. That's it. Again, a touch of wheels is all it takes. A lapse in concentration, and when the weather is very, very warm, it's very easy to. And it's like a couple of riders have come down. So that's 155, and that's Ryan Eastman, the American on the Bissell development team. So hopefully he'll be back up and running. But at the speed Sky are going at the moment, that's going to be a very difficult task for him. As we look at the slow motion, a couple of the Bissell riders possibly touching wheels. And what you do see, Brian, more and more now is that riders in the peloton ride as a group, they ride as a unit. It helps them move up and down the bunch. So it's not uncommon now for when there's a crash for several riders of one particular team to come down at the same time.
Yeah, it's quite unfortunate. We do see the bunching of riders in the peloton kind of looking after each other, and sometimes when we do see crashes in a lot of races, because they are bunched together, sometimes it's, you know, you have to spread out more than stay together, because then you risk not having too many riders in a crash. But what happened there was Team Sky went to the front, they put the pressure on. The pressure is on them to try and control this breakaway. And the peloton were kind of in one line, and unfortunately maybe they were trying to kind of move up on the left hand side, and maybe someone moved over, and then all of a sudden touch of wheels, and then onto the gravel. You don't really want to fall in gravel. It's sore, and you know, it's hard to get out. You have to get the kind of wire brush after the finish, so nasty. But just getting some information from some of the team cars saying it's very, very hot, but they're expecting everything to come back together, and everybody's just sitting and waiting because of the conditions, and a lot of people are getting tired. They're just sitting and waiting for the last 3 kilometers of the climb, because the last kilometer is pretty severe in about 15–16%.
Well, when you flip things around tactically, as we see as Ryan Eastman trying to get back to the back of the peloton, you can see the scuffs on his helmet and the side of his jersey there. He did take quite a nasty tumble. And the clothing these days, the jerseys used to be a little bit thicker than they are, but they are what we call now a race fit, so they're a skin tight sort of jersey. Very, very thin indeed, obviously for increased aerodynamics. The good thing about them in these sorts of conditions is they are very cooling, but of course they offer hardly any protection at all when you lay it down. So not much protection for these riders, but hopefully, but it looks like it's up and running, so no broken bones for Ryan there. Let's hope he can negotiate his way back through the rather long convoy, and the convoy does give riders a second chance when they've had a mechanical or a fall to get back into the bunch. And depending on the commissaires in the race will depend on how lenient they are in relation to riders getting back up. You do get some commissaires who do quite literally apply the rule in a very literal fashion. They'll create a barrage, so when a rider is trying to get back through the peloton using the slipstream of the vehicles, it will actually pull the vehicles out, so the rider has to then use his own effort, his own steam to get back to the bunch. But most most commissaires are quite fair, and when a rider's had a mechanical at a non-critical part of the race, they generally allow them to weave their way back through to the safety of the peloton. It's something that is one of those unwritten rules, isn't it, Brian, in the bunch? Some referees are different, but generally speaking, in the incident that we've just seen, a lot of the other team cars will actually help that particular rider get back as well by letting him draft and etc.
Yeah, it's always good. It's a professional way. You know, you race throughout the world in different places, and you know, it's nice to help each other out, because the commissaires, the referees, will fine you if you ride behind your own car. So that's why each of the cars help each other out. You just see a lot of activity behind the peloton, a lot of bottles being given up, and also they will put ice packs, or put ice in you know, women's stockings, tights, and things like that to put behind your neck because of the extreme conditions here. But again, because of the conditions and the heat and the length of the stage, 174.6 kilometres, but because of this last climb, it is pretty severe. Everybody's going to wait and wait. You know, we're expecting obviously Wiggins to be there. He just has to limit his losses, and I think he'll really be there. As I wouldn't be surprised if he's there and thereabouts for the stage one. You've got to think of Acevedo, second last year, Machado, Boucher, Stettiner, Yates, so many good riders. Dennis will be there as well, but I've been told obviously by the Belkin boys that Bob Reach is going to have a good crack as well, so we'll see. But we're just about to catch the King of the Mountains. Good job today, and that's Will Ridley of the Optum team.
Well, Will Ridley will be thinking of another day. His job is done, and he's about to be caught by the Team Sky led peloton. We're going to take another commercial break, so go and grab yourselves a brew, come back and sit and watch the final of this stage of Tour of California. Don't go away. Welcome back to stage 3 of the Amgen Tour of California. 174.6 kilometers from San Jose, running in a northerly direction to the Mount Diablo State Park and the climb, mountaintop finish of Mount Diablo itself. 18 kilometers in length, 16% maximum gradient with an average gradient of 5.4%. The riders already today have climbed Mount Hamilton at the first part of the stage, and there's a breakaway still out in front, and they have a lead of 4 minutes and 5 seconds. There are now 7 riders in front. The 8th rider, Will Routley, the Canadian, wearing the King of the Mountains jersey, took the points on the first climb of the day and has now dropped back to the safety of the peloton. But it's Team Sky who have now started to up the pace a little bit, looking after the yellow jersey interest of Bradley Wiggins. The climb not too far away, 38.5 kilometers to go. The riders soon will be crossing the state line in from Alameda County into the Contra Costa County. It's just skirted around Livermore. That town is now behind them. The next town they'll go through is Tasajara, then they'll go through Black Hawk, and then they'll start, or they'll enter Mount Diablo State Park, which, Brian, is a very twisting climb. There's lots of hairpins, it changes direction constantly. There's not that many long straights on it at all. It's a very technical climb, but not overly steep until the top. And I think teams know how Sky ride. They know how Bradley Wiggins rides climbs. So as you said, they'll probably wait till the end to attack him. So do you think that we'll see as many, Team Sky setting a hard tempo from the bottom and the teams waiting, or do you think guys will attack early? How do you think it's going to pan out? Do you think we'll see most of the action at the back end when the road really starts to ramp itself up?
Yeah, most of the teams are going to wait until the last 3 kilometres, because the last kilometre is the hardest. We do have 15-60% ramps up towards the finish, and you know, everybody's thinking of trying for the stage win. Everybody will know how Team Sky rides, but as I said, they don't have the kind of A team, but they've got a good team here. But I've just noticed that Danny Pate is now riding in this in the front now, so it means that you know, the pressure is on. This gap isn't coming down too quickly, and you know, they're forced to use 4 riders. They did start off with 2. That was Boswell and Luke Rowe. They added Errol to that, and now they've added Danny Pate, so 4 riders, and they want to try and bring it back a wee bit. We are inside the last 40 kilometres. This brute of a climb still to come, so they will be used up, and then we get onto the climb, and they'll use the likes of Edmondson and Dombrowski. They are the 2 riders behind Bradley Wiggins. They're being kept for the climb, but Yeah, everybody waiting. Extreme conditions, well over 30 degrees, about 34 degrees I think it is, and a lot of drinks taken on board, and it's going to be a real hard climb in the end, and the last 3 kilometres is when everybody's expecting the fireworks to start.
Because when you're riding in these conditions at 25, 26, 27 miles an hour on the flat, it is still very, very warm, but of course you've got the cooling effects of the breeze, and you can maintain a reasonable temperature. The heat really kicks in when the speed drops and you hit the slopes. It becomes completely different, doesn't it? So it's going to be vital these riders get enough fluid on board and actually keep drinking throughout the climb. We did see lots of riders dropping back to get bead-ons. You'll see riders sticking probably 7, 8, 9 bead-ons up one of the jerseys. They get them up the front of the jersey, down the back of the jersey, in the pockets of course, so they can make best use of each run up and down the peloton. So it's vital these guys get the fluids on board.
You'll see some of the riders, like the rider at the front there, with one bottle on, and that's number 44, Nathan Earl, the Tasmanian. And again, if you have 2 bottles on your bike, they start to get warm, because you've got the coolers, you've got 2 coolers in the back of the car, and with as many bottles as possible. So when you get a bottle, you want it as cold as possible, and then when you start pouring it over yourself, like most people do, as soon as you start that, you have to continue with it. So 1 bottle for pouring over, 1 bottle for obviously your electrolytes, and it's going to be very difficult for these riders to get through. We just saw last year the first 2 or 3 stages were really extreme. There was people obviously stopping because of the extreme temperatures, but Bradley looks good, he looks cool, he's not fazed by anything, and I think this will be a good day for him, but he will be attacked.
I certainly think that will happen. There's lots of other riders in this field with overall aspirations. There's nobody taking, putting the rule down the field that we've got here today. There's nobody with outstanding results. A lot of the results have come from previous editions of this Tour of California. But it's going to be, it's very, very open, very difficult to predict exactly what is going to happen. But we've named a few of the people we feel are going to attack Bradley Wiggins, but he certainly is in a very strong position at the moment. A man in fine form, training particularly for this race. After the Paris-Roubaix, took a bit of a break and then went over to Mallorca with the sole purpose of getting the miles in and losing the weight. That weight has now dropped off. He's at his 20 for 12 Tour de France winning weight. He looks very lean and focused, and objective number 1 has been ticked, and that's winning the time trial. I think he'd be quite pleased to have won it in such a fashion, taking that amount of time in such a relatively short distance. But we're talking again about the heat today. It's extremely warm. Normally, in most races, Brian, as we all well know, and a lot of our viewers will know, the final feed, well, there's no more feeding after 20 kilometres. Now, that rule can be subject to interpretation and the discretion of the commissaires. And I would think on this particular day, they're going to allow feeding right the way to the finish line, or they'll stop it at 5Ks to go. But it should be quite, I mean, we don't have that information to hand, but when there's extreme weather conditions, it's something that they can change, but it's up to the discretion of the commissaire.
Yeah, it's going to be logistically too difficult for that to happen, because as you can imagine, the whole race is going to hit this climb. There's going to be guys coming out the back. There's going to be small gaps, and to get team cars in there, it's going to be very, very difficult. And on a climb, the likes of Team Sky are using 4 of the riders up at the front, and to drop back and get back up, give the bottles. What I would do in this situation is possibly, once you've done the feat and you've got 2 cars in the race, most have got 2 cars, 1 to go on the breakaway and 1 to go behind the main peloton. What I would do is at the feat you have a car. Normally that's the car that drops behind the peloton, but as some of the teams know about these conditions, they'll probably send a car to the finishing climb and maybe position 2 of their soigneurs, 2 of their staff on the climb at certain areas with bottles, with a cooler, to hand up bottles on the way up. To get them off the car, I think it's going to be too difficult in this final climb, because the cars will be held back as a kind of barrage, not to fill any of the gaps between the groups.
I know a lot of the teams in these very hot conditions, I've spoken to a lot of the teams about preparing for, as we head to the front of the breakaway, and it looks like some of the riders are actually getting bottles from the motorbike on the right hand side.
They'll get them from possibly neutral service, because some of these riders in this breakaway match might not have 2 cars. They might only have the 1 car behind it, and that's behind the peloton, so they'll have to be serviced by neutral service. So you put your hand up and there's no car there, then the motorbike commissaire will just go to neutral service and say, look, have you any water, and pass it up.
It's not just an issue of feeling thirsty. It's a genuine health and safety issue in these conditions. Riders need to be hydrated, you know, performing at the level they're performing. It's vital that they get things on board. I've been in a race where I became dehydrated. I quit the race, and I had a seizure and ended up in an ambulance. But you know, a couple of hours later I was fine. It was purely because I didn't have enough water in my body. It's quite a frightening situation to be in. So vital that these riders get the amount of water, the right amount of fluids on board. But it's before the race as well. You need to wake up fully hydrated. All of these teams, especially at the higher level, and even at some of the smaller teams now, will have doctors within the teams. They'll have dietitians, people making sure that the riders have got the right hydration levels. And it's simple. I mean, I'm not going to be too crude, but it's making sure that the urine is clear when they start the race. If you start a race in these conditions with the urine that isn't clear, you're onto a loser straight away. So that it's fundamentally, it's vitally important that the riders are hydrated at the start and then throughout the race.
Yeah, it's pretty much virtually impossible to keep 100% hydrated.
Yeah,
I know I've trained in hyperbaric chambers and things like that, and tested things out, and physically trying to drink as much as they say you're going to drink, you feel sick. It's not physically capable. It's just monitoring it and making sure that you're not losing too much, because as you realised, it's like hitting the wall when you've run out of you know, food, the knock as they call it, hitting the wall. It's pretty much similar to that when you get dehydrated. It's a similar feeling, and it's not nice in both sides.
It's certainly not pleasant. We head to the front now. Peloton at 4:05. It did drop below 4 minutes, but this group's still working very well together. Says Ruben Zapunk, Martin Wyants, Jonathan Clark, Paul Voss, Robbie Squire. Of course, we lost the Canadian Will Routley, and then Luis Davia, and you can see Luis Davia fourth in line there in the green shorts and the white top, denoting he is the Mexican champion. And riding on the third wheel there, we have Jonathan Clark in the white and blue of United Healthcare, and just completing his turn on the front, you have Martin Wyants of Belgium in the green and black of Belkin, and then Bissell, the Bissell development team managed by the son of Eddie Merckx, Axel Merckx, in the white and red. These riders working very, very smoothly. Only 32.3 kilometers to go. The gap still 4 minutes and 5 seconds. I think Bradley Wiggins is going to be overly concerned, but they do want to try and knock another minute off that before they hit the final climb, I'd say.
Yeah, they're going to do that. At least I would think they would want to hit the final climb with the group of 7 riders at about 2 minutes. But these 7 riders will want to try and keep the pressure on Team Sky. I know that obviously NetApp Enduro with Machado, and they'll want to keep the pressure on, and they'll say to Paul Voss, try and keep these guys riding with you.
Well, we'll take our final commercial break. There'll be no breaks on the final climb of Mount Diablo, so please stay with us. We'll be back in a bit. Three of the Amgen Tour of California, on a route that takes us from San Jose and then in a snaking northerly direction to the Mount Diablo State Park, where we finish up the fearsome climb of the same name, Mount Diablo. 5.4% gradient, 16% it maxes out at near the top. A very difficult climb. We've only got 20 miles to go of the stage. The peloton being led by Team Sky and 7 riders still out in front. Lost one of their number a few kilometers ago. Will Routley, the Canadian, scored the point earlier in the stage, the King of the Mountain, so we'll keep that jersey. He's now safely back in the peloton. But it's Team Sky setting a tempo at the front. The 7 riders out in front still have a relatively healthy lead. We are getting reports on your screen. We have a gap of 4 minutes 5. We have also got other slightly conflicting information that the gap has come down to around 3:20, so we'll keep you fully abreast of that. We do believe there is a little bit of problems with our graphics, but we'll keep you as best informed in relation to the correct time gap. But Sky certainly have turned up the pace over the last 15 or 20 miles and have started to eat into the lead of the 7 riders in front, and they are Ruben Zapunk of Bissell, Martin Wyants of Belgium, of Belkin, sorry, Jonathan Clark of United Healthcare, Paul Voss of NetApp Enduro, Robbie Squire of James Hagen's Berman, Luis Davia, the Mexican national road race champion of Jelly Belly, and David Lozano of Team Novo Nordisk. The team made up entirely of people of riders with type 1 diabetes. But there we go, Bradley Wiggins looking very, very relaxed and lean, as we said before, surrounded by his teammates, saving 2 of the younger climbers for the final climb, it appears. We haven't seen Josh Edmondson on the front yet, or Joseph Dombrowski. Dombrowski, a very good, well, slim, young American climber, knows the area very well indeed. So no doubt he's passed that information on to Bradley Wiggins. We did see Bradley Wiggins talking to Danny Pate about the climb, so he's going to be pretty well informed. But at the moment, it's the the workhorses of the Team Sky who are riding on the front to keep that tempo high and try and bring that break back. Luke Rowe, Danny Pate, Christian Nays, Nathan Earl, all working hard at the front with Ian Boswell as well. And you can see them there. The wind obviously coming from the left-hand side. And there we have a corrected graphic now, the gap down to 3 minutes and 5 seconds. So they have shaved a minute off in around the last 10 miles, Brian. So they are slowly eating into the lead of the 7 leaders. But the lead is still not giving up and working very, very well together. But so far, so good for Team Sky.
Yeah, looking good. And Danny Pate obviously came up in the last 10 kilometres. They had a bit of a chat if the gap was not coming down. The maximum they got was 6 minutes and 25 seconds. The best place in the breakaway was at 2 minutes and 42 seconds. So they had to try and do something. So it was kind of hovering about the 5-minute mark. You see Mark Cavendish in the green jersey just towards the back, 22. So he'll just get to the bottom of the climb and ride up, save his power for another day. But yeah, it's Danny Pate's come up, made the difference. He's a big powerhouse, and they've taken about a minute off.
Quite interesting as we see the figure of Mark Cavendish there. He's just stretching his muscles. He knows what's coming up, and as you correctly said, Brian, he's just going to want to get to the finish to limit his losses. There'll be no problems for him doing that. But interestingly, although he's riding in the green jersey, yesterday's stage there was no points awarded, and today there's no points awarded towards that jersey, so they're not going to be eaten away. Very different than the points jersey in the Tour de France. And of course on stage 6, the other mountaintop finish, no points awarded. The points are only awarded on stage where they feel it could be a bunt sprint or a stage that isn't mountainous or a time trial. So quite an interestingly, slightly complicated classification, but I hope I've clarified that for you. So Mark Cavendish is in no danger at all today of losing that green jersey.
I'll tell you what, man, it's nice to see the Mexican champion in here, and that's Luis Davila of the Yellow Belly team. He's obviously got the green shorts in there, 22-year-old. He's been national champion for the last couple of years. It's not often we see many riders from Mexico, and nice to see them in the break. So obviously Jonathan Clark, United Healthcare, he's in the blue and the white. We don't get a lot of views of the breakaway to go through them. You can just see the extra white marks on the jersey of Thor Hushovd, the Norwegian champion. A lot of riders having shedding a lot of salt today because of the conditions. Fast Freddy Rodriguez at the back, the American road race champion, won that in a small group sprint last year at not a very young age. He's
40 years of age, isn't he? He's the 3rd oldest rider in the race behind Zubeldia and of course Jan Vogt.
Yeah, so yeah, there's a few oldies in here, but still goodies at that same time. Obviously, Jens Vogt done a good time trial yesterday, and he wanted to try and keep in the top 10 today with a good performance. He rode well last year. Just going through last year, when we look at Fast Freddy here, obviously Leo Koenig won the stage here the first time they went out Mount Diablo in the history of the Amgen Tour of California. But Acevedo finished 7 seconds behind. Also Mad Boucher, he finished 29 seconds behind. Lawson Craddock, I said we can't discount him at all. Rode a good time trial yesterday, finished 7th last year. Jose Mendes of NetApp Endura finished 9th. Rowan Dennis 11th last year at 44 seconds. Moynard of BMC at 56 seconds. Chad Haga, who's now riding for Giant Shimano as well, he was just over a minute down. Vossi was in there, Paul Voss, and Zubeldia also in there, just over 1 minute. So that's the riders that are in this in the race today. They rode well, they know the climb, but just to show you the time gaps, you know, you can in the last 3 kilometres you can lose about 30 seconds if you're struggling.
You certainly can. It's a very, very tough finish. Added to the mix, the very, very hot conditions. But it just shows, I think, although Bradley's still got it all to do, excuse me, on the climb today, the sort of form he's in. There was comments made by Taylor Finney yesterday that there was, I mean, Taylor didn't think he had a particularly good ride, but still it was a respectable ride, and they said there was nothing, when Bradley Wiggins is on form like that, there's nothing you can do. But of course the riders that you've talked about, Moynard being one of them. Matthew Bush was up there in the top 10 overall. They're now over 2 minutes down on Bradley Wiggins, and that was lost just in a 20.1 kilometre time trial. A superb, display of strength by Bradley Wiggins. Do you think riders are going to be frightened of Bradley Wiggins? Do you think they're going to think, well, do you think they're actually going to be in a position where they think, actually, I'm going to wait to attack because he's clearly on very, very good form? When you look at a rider like Bradley Wiggins on form, in the shape he's in, he has a certain presence. He has a certain gravitas, that riders will respect, and I would imagine fear as well. Do you think that will affect riders' psychology as they hit the climb?
Well, that's where the sports director comes into play. He has to focus the minds of the team, and they have a plan and stick to the plan no matter what. Team Sky have got their plan, and obviously Bradley Wiggins has been in this situation umpteen times as a yellow jersey, so he's not fazed by any of this. He's got his plan. Team Sky will talk every day about this. They'll have the meeting in the morning, and they'll decide how they want to play this out. And it's the same with every team. Likes of NetApp and Jura, they were, I think, looking for Jose Mendes to be in the breakaway today, but he wasn't there and Paul Voss is there, so they have to kind of readjust as they go along. That's why, we love cycling, because the dynamics change all the time. It's fantastic to see it all happening. But the likes of Trek Factory Racing, Garmin Sharp, and these teams, they haven't done any work whatsoever, and they're just sitting back and waiting. And I don't think Bradley's going to lose much time, if any, at all today. But he's definitely going to be attacked, and that's why most of the teams are sitting back waiting to take that opportunity, because you can just see Danny Pate giving it big licks on the front of the peloton now. All these four riders have ridden right from the start. Actually, 9th and 10th over the top of the climb is Rowe and Boswell, so they have been riding all day, so they're going to be slightly fatigued now as we hit this climb, so he'll be depleted in numbers, but he's still got two young guys behind him to help him, and that's Edmondson and Dombrowski.
Team Sky lead the chase on stage 3 of the Amgen Tour of California. San Jose to Mount Diablo, we have 7 leaders in front. They've been away since the flag dropped this morning, and they currently have a gap of 3 minutes and 10 seconds over the Team Sky-led peloton. Working for Bradley Wiggins, you can just see in the middle of your picture, he's now obscured in the yellow jersey. As the bunch fans across the road, it won't be long before they reach the foot slopes of this climb. Another few kilometres, another 7 or 8 Ks, and they'll be in the national park. But the breakaway riders, consisting of Ruben de Punkt of Bissell, Martin Wyants of Belkin, Jonathan Clark of United Healthcare, Paul Voss, the German, riding on the NetApp Endura team, a very likeable character indeed. Robbie Squire from James Hagen's Berman, 24-year-old American, and Luis Davia of Jelly Belly, the Mexican national road race champion, as well as the Spaniard David Lodano. They are working very well together. Still 3 minutes. Team Sky slowly but surely are eating into the lead of these guys. They were 8 strong earlier on in the race. Of course, we've lost one of their riders, Will Roatley, to the peloton. His job is done. He'll be wearing the Mountains jersey for another day. So a very respectable ride from him today. Had one objective and won the climb very early on. As you can see now, possibly a tailwind here. The trees either side of the road sheltering the riders, so that's why you get them fanning out across the road, despite the fact that Team Sky are still riding quite hard at the front, and the gap now holding at 3 minutes. It won't be long, Brian, before we hit the foot slopes of Mount Diablo. And what have the riders got in store? We know the gradient is 5.4 average, it kicks up at the top. What's the road like?
Yeah, the road's actually okay. It's wide enough, so there's it's not like you get into the kind of Pyrenees and you get a single track. It's quite a wide road, as most of the roads here in the States. So but you can just see a lot of the teams coming up towards the front. You can just see Belkin again. They have disappointment with Ten Dam crashing after the finish of the time trial yesterday, but they'll be looking to try and do something. Belkin obviously want to show well here in the Tour of California for their sponsor. Ten Dam is the rider that they would be want to look after. there's so many other riders in there. Jack Bobridge, who's I've been told is going to have a good crack today as well. They have got a rider in the breakaway, very experienced rider, Martin Winans. He's been a pro for about 10 years. So, you know, he's one of these kind of strong riders. This year he was 6th in Kuurne Brussels Kuurne, so he's one of these kind of strong classics riders. And he's probably been told in the breakaway, look, just ride, try and keep this pressure on Team Sky.
And yeah, we have another crash. We saw them fanning across the road, and at this stage in the race, riders are getting very fatigued. It's hot. They've got nearly 100 miles in the legs already, and a slight lapse in concentration, and we've seen number 53 there, and that's Matthew Heyman, formerly of Team Sky himself, a big, strong rouleur, has hit the deck quite hard. His skin suit was very torn, so it looks like 4 or 5 riders have crashed. They're all back and riding again, but that's going to hurt. That's certainly going to take the wind out of the sails. Not a place that you wanted to crash, especially if you had any objectives of getting up that climb particularly quickly. But I think we've got a slow motion here of this one, Brian, yet right in the middle of the group. Couldn't see exactly what happened. There's no road furniture there. It looks like it's simply rider error, a bit of a touch of wheels.
That's
and
all
down they've gone. It's simple as that.
3/4 away towards the back of the bunch there, and I think it's a case of we can see some teams starting to move up the outsides, and as you know, Matt, when you're 3/4 away back in the bunch, it's either right, how can I get out to the left or the right to move up, and somebody's moved over, touch of wheels, and there's just a wee bit of nervousness in the peloton as we see this rider from Optum in the orange helmet here. That's Huff, and he'd probably be in a huff after crashing.
You took the words right out of my mouth there.
Yeah,
that was supposed to be my pun.
Okay,
but, there
you
we
want
go.
to rewind there?
Yes, please.
Okay, as we see that rider Optum in 1, 2, 3 has obviously been involved with that crash.
I bet he's in a bit of a huff. Thank you. No. Joking aside, it's not good fun when you fall off. But again, riders are very tired at this point in the race, and it is very easy to take your eye off the ball. All it takes is a slight look sideways, and then you're off. And you do often get, right, it's surprising, all these riders are very skilled, they're professionals, this is what they do for a living, but it's surprising sometimes how riders can take their eye off the ball. As we head back to the break, and it's Paul Voss.
Just look at the speed of them, Mark. They've been told they want to drive into this climb, keep the pressure on Team Sky, because they want to tire out the 4 riders in the front, so that we come to the climb. He only has Christian Knies, Edmondson and Dombrovski, so they want to keep the pressure on. So that is, some people ask, why do you go on a breakaway if you're going to get caught? It's you have a team meeting, and obviously for some of these riders it's about getting in the breakaway for sponsors, you know, to show your sponsors on TV. But there's other things like Martin Winans, Paul Voss, get somebody in that breakaway, keep the pressure on Team Sky as we start to see some other teams come to the front of the peloton.
And there we see Matt Heyman, victim of that crash a kilometre or so ago, scarred. He's cut his left hip and his elbow. He's not going to be very pleased at all. But as many of you will know, there is a doctor. We've got Barbie on board that one as well, but he'll now be patched up on the move. Some magic spray, a bit of a wipe down. Not much more he can do really. He might get that patched up so he doesn't get dirt in the wounds. That's the last thing you want, and that's one of the reasons, apart from aesthetics, that riders do shave the legs when they come off at speed with hairy legs, and you get bits of grit and dirt caught in the hairs. It can create an infection. So with shaved legs, although it is aesthetic as well, and a little bit more improved aerodynamics, of course, it's primarily because it's better if riders do crash. It's easy to clean the wound so you don't get infections.
And the car they use for doctors' cars are normally cabriolets.
They are normally
because
cabriolets.
It's easier to patch up the rider.
There we go. Well, before we hit the slopes of Mount Diablo, before the action really takes place, I'm going to give you one little fact of the day. It's a bit of a golden nugget. We passed through Livermore earlier on in the stage, and this city, Brian, was home to a 4-watt light bulb in the fire station that's been lit since 1901.
What was that?
It's a light bulb that's been lit since 1901, making it the world's longest lasting light bulb.
How long?
Over 100 years. There we go. Back at the breakaway here on the foot slopes of Mount Diablo. The gap now down to 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And the United Healthcare team car. We may get a little bit of picture breakup on this climb. The climb is punctuated by some trees. We are in a national park, of course, so there is forests. So excuse us if we do get picture breakup. I know our host broadcast will try and get the best possible pictures to you, but sometimes this is the very nature of broadcasting in these sorts of environments. as we head back to the break. And you can see there's a definite gradient there, but it's not too steep. They're still travelling at a fair lick. And that's Martin Weinitz, the Belgian, possibly calling for some water. There was, I think, the United Healthcare team did come up and give some water to their rider there.
Well, this is the point they're racing to, Mark, this right-hand turn, and the road narrows ever so slightly. There's no real panic. There's still a long way to go on this stage and this climb. So, but the breakaway are still trying to, keep this advantage, keep the pressure on the teams at the front. But it's all changed at the front of the peloton, and now we see the team of Cannondale in the lime green. Also, BMC were in there, and I could also see Giant Shimano up towards the front also.
They'll have sensed that Team Sky have had a hard day riding on the front all day. So we shall see what happens over the next few kilometres as the road starts to ramp up. It's BMC on the front at the moment. So we're on the final climb of stage 3 of the Tour of California. We started in San Jose. We're ending the stage today on the fearsome slopes of Mount Diablo in the national park of the same name. We are now on the slopes. We had a breakaway. We have a breakaway of 7 riders. They have a gap at the foot of this climb of just over 2 minutes. We'll get confirmation of the exact gap in a minute, but the gap has been brought down steadily by Team Sky, riding of course for Sir Bradley Wiggins, resplendent in yellow today after his victory in yesterday's 20-kilometre time trial, where he absolutely smashed the field to bits in a quite remarkable display of power that have no doubt has got some of the general classification contenders very worried indeed. Of course, we do still have all of this climb to come. Bradley Wiggins riding very near the front. His team, most of his teammates now would have been expended. Would have no doubt there'll be a couple of teammates left, possibly Christian Knees and the 2 young climbers on Team Sky, Josh Edmondson and Joe Dombrowski, who'll be staying with him as long as they can. We thought Team Sky were going to take it up at the bottom, Brian, but other teams have now got into the mix, which is very interesting. Cannondale for one, and for Peter Stettiner, BMC have taken up the pacemaking. It did look like it was Greg Van Avermaet doing a long turn at the bottom just to keep the pace high, as riders drop like flies from the back of the peloton now.
Well, you just touched on that about team tactics. Sky have got their team tactics, and so if the other teams, and obviously Shiandri, who's here for BMC, has decided, right, as soon as we hit this climb, we're going to put the pressure on and see Swiss champion Michael Schaar comes towards the front. He wants to make this climb as difficult as possible. So they have their team tactics and they stick with them no matter what. They're not just going to say, oh, we'll sit behind Team Sky, they're doing a good tempo. No, they have their own team tactics and they have their own sports director that will say, look, no matter what any other team is going, we have got a plan and we're going to stick with it, and that's why they've decided to make it hard right from the bottom here.
And that's what makes it so interesting to watch. I was quite fascinated to see Cannondale at the front there, driving very hard to the bottom of the climb. But this break now is splintering under the pressure. Martin Weinitz tapping out, looking quite relaxed on his bike as riders drop back. It looks like David Lozano is losing a few wheel lengths, but Paul Voss is still in there, and so is the young national champion of Mexico, Luis Davia. So 4 riders now in front. Lozano trying to keep in contact, but as we said, this isn't a steep climb, it's long, it's gradual for most of the climb until it kicks up right at the end, Brian. It's 5.4%. So it's the kind of climb that you can get into a good rhythm and actually work in a group, and there is a definite benefit as opposed to the very steep climbs of actually riding in the slipstream of other riders.
It's a power climb at this moment in time, and that's why we're seeing the big power guys that are coming towards the front. So that's why you see Martin Weinitz of Belkin, as we said earlier on this year, he finished 6th in Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne. He's been a pro for 10 years, 32-year-old. So this is the sort of climb that when you start putting the power down early on, that's when, if you've been in the breakaway like all day, like most of these riders, it's tired legs, and you get shed straight away. So it is a power climb. We get to about a mile to go, just but a kilometre and a half to go. It goes to 10%, and then it's hard all the way towards the finish. So the hard parts are all still to come. A lot of riders, as we said, know this climb. Paul Voss now comes towards the front. He's doing something similar to what happened last year with when Leo Koenig won the stage. David De La Cruz was the rider in front in the breakaway, and he just kept the pressure on, going with him at this moment in time is Martin Wynants, who we've already mentioned, in the green from Belkin. Also Robbie Squire from Jamis, he's just behind him in the red. And the rider at the back is the Mexican champion, the young rider, Luis Davila, the 22-year-old. So 4 riders, original 8, dropped the King of the Mountains. Now we're on the lower slopes of the climb with the funny man and the funny hat,
I think
having
that's
a big flag.
Yeah, we certainly are going to see a little bit of that. A little bit dangerous that it does frustrate me a little bit, especially when these riders are riding at speed. But yeah, there we go. I'm glad he's out of the way now, leaving these riders to their own devices. Paul Voss.
Look,
that was a semi attack there. Wynants, again, a very talented rider. 10th, well, he got 10th place a couple of years back in Paris-Roubaix as well. So as you say, this is a climb that can suit the power climber. But Paul Voss riding very, very strongly. It looked like that wasn't really a full-on attack. It was more of a test to see how the other riders are going. But he's riding very, very well. Still holding it. 2:25 now. The bottom of the climb, it was 2 minutes 30. So the bunch has only taken 5 seconds out of this group. Still 14.5 kilometers to go, so a very long way, but that's a healthy lead, Brian.
Yep.
And with this sort of distance. But Wynants, that's it. We now have 3 leaders. Voss looks over his shoulders to see what sort of damage he has caused, and we head back to the peloton. And it's BMC setting a good rhythm there. But there are still several Team Sky riders, 3 or 4 Team Sky riders back there. You see Matthew Bush back there for Trek in the black, and Bradley Wiggins riding on about 5th or 6th wheel. And it's Michael Schär, the Swiss National Road Race Champion, in the white. He does ride on the team of BMC, but obviously as he's the Swiss National Road Champion, he'll be riding in the white jersey with the red cross, of course. His jersey fully unzipped, trying to keep as cool as possible. Many riders, there's a couple of riders from Sky having their jerseys fully unzipped to keep cool. 93 degrees. And now the Mexican Luis Davila attacks from Jelly Belly, the National Road Champion of Mexico. It's all going on now, Brian.
Yeah, he's decided to light it up. It's very early in this climb. I would try and keep it together. Paul Voss is not deciding to react to this. He'll just set a tempo. Again, David De La Cruz did this for NetApp Enduro last year, just kept the pressure on him, is caught in the final few kilometres. The longer Paul Voss stays out there, then NetApp Enduro just have to sit in the wheels, and they have got a strong team here with Camaño, De La Cruz, Machado and Jose Mendes to try and do something. But as I said, nice to see the Mexican champion in this breakaway trying to go on the attack. But BMC are the riders that are taking it up. Obviously Michael Schär was the Swiss champion towards the front. They've also got Amaya Moynard, Martin Kohler towards the front, but they are thinking of Peter Stettiner. Lost a bit of time yesterday, but want to repay his team because he did come here as the leader of the team. Disappointing time trial, and he want to repay them with a stage win today.
He certainly will. He lost 2 minutes and 30 seconds in the time trial yesterday to Bradley Wiggins, 42nd place on the day. But at the moment, it's the Mexican Luis Davila who did put a little bit of a surge in there. But Paul Voss from NetApp Enduro in the blue and the black and white in 3rd place on your screen there, gradually pegging them back. Paul Voss, a very experienced rider, been on the circuit for a few years now. Back in 2010, won stage 1 of the Tour of Catalonia, so a very capable rider, and did ride in the leader's jersey of King of the Mountains in the Giro d'Italia for a couple of stages, so a very good climber himself. As we head back, and it's Josh Edmondson now for Team Sky, setting the tempo at the front. Stage 3 of the Tour of California. We're on the final slopes of Mount Diablo. We have a breakaway of 7 riders spread all over the mountainside. The peloton at 1 minute and 25 seconds. The yellow jersey of Bradley Wiggins sat comfortably in this group, riding at about 4th wheel at the moment. Josh Edmondson riding a steady rhythm, but the leaders on the road, we have Luis Davila from Jelly Belly. We have Paul Voss from NetApp Enduro, and we also have Robbie Squire from James Hagen's Berman, the American rider, 24 years of age, now taking his turn at the front. This is one of those climbs where you can ride, you can do through and off, as it were, taking turns on the front. There is still the slipstreaming effect. About a kilometre ago, the road did steepen, and that's when the Mexican decided to launch a bit of an attack. But Paul Voss, he's not giving up. This is the sort of climber where you can get into a rhythm. It's not about panicking. if you know yourself well, you just need to pace yourself on a climb like this. If you start reacting to more punchier riders, it's curtains, isn't it? If you put yourself into the red, that's when you lose it all and you can start dropping back. But Paul Voss riding very maturely. Look, he's pegging them back now. He's riding his own race, his own rhythm, and he's still in contention.
You got to remember these two riders are young in front of him. The Mexican champion is 22 and Robbie Squire is 24, and Robbie Squire was actually the under 23 American champion way back in 2011, and he got some opportunities, but it didn't really kind of work out for him. But this normally happens. We get onto a climb, they feel good. I don't think both of them rode the stage last year, so the climb will be unknown to them. But Paul Voss, who was up there in the stage last year, finishing 17th, losing just over 1 minute, so he knows the climb and he's experienced enough. He's just coming back after a crash. He actually fractured the bone in his hand, so he's just kind of coming back after that. He rode Frankfurt before he came here, so he's not at full form, but he's got the experience just to let these guys attack each other and then ride back to them.
Peloton now at 1 minute 25 seconds, 7.5 miles to go. We have 3 leaders in front. I've no doubt the other members of the breakaway will soon be absorbed by the bunch, being led at the moment by the riders from Team Sky, and it's young Joshua Edmondson on the front. But at the moment it's the flying Mexican, and it's the national road champion Luis Davia, riding very, very strong. They're riding fast here. This is a bit of a plateau, almost like a false flat before it kicks up again. They're riding here about 23, 24 miles an hour up this climb. You can just tell, riding very, very strongly indeed. 11.8 Ks to go, and Davia at the moment doing lots and lots of work at the front. Robbie Squire just letting him do it, and this is what you can do if there's somebody that's eager and willing to ride. You just let them do it, don't you? As you say, he's a very young rider. He's riding in amongst some quite esteemed company in this race, and sometimes that can be something that's quite detrimental to young riders. They don't think they get drawn in by the adrenaline and the rush of the situation that they're in. Be interesting to see if he can maintain this sort of pace all the way up the climb. But there's only so many attacks you've got. Everybody has a finite amount of energy, and it's about measuring that energy and using it and pacing yourself as best you can.
Well, Robbie Squire took the inside line when there was some vegetation in the middle, so he's taken the inside line. And just last week he finished 20th in the Tour of the Gila, which was a preparation race for a lot of the American Continental teams for this race. A lot of hills in that race, and you know, a good preparation race. But the 3 are still riding well together. The gap is coming down all the time, but you know, interesting to see that BMC have decided to take it up early on this climb, looking for Stetina. But now it's Team Sky want to keep a good momentum, and it's the young British rider Josh Edmondson at the front.
We did say Josh Edmondson will be riding hard, and there was a Team Soigneur from Sky at the side of the road there. We thought they would be dotted up and down the climb. These riders need to keep on taking fluids. The temperatures here today in the mid-90s. On the flatlands it was 93 degrees. Not a cloud in the sky. Very, very warm conditions. And there's not a cloud in the sky. But it's Team Sky at the front of this bunch, gradually eating into the lead of these 3 riders, now starting to look at each other. And the gap now down to just over 1 minute. And Robbie Squire, this is quite an interesting rhythm. They seem to be looking at each other and surging rather than riding as a unit. That's not the way to ride. This is a sort of climb that can suit 3 riders. They could swap turns, ride at an even pace. I just think that, and I say it respectfully of course, that just shows a little bit of immaturity. And Paul Voss, the older statesman of this particular trio, sitting back, just relaxing, and now he's in the slipstream of 2 young riders who don't really seem to know how to ride this final climb, apart from just with unbridled passion rather than tactical nous.
You try and ride behind 2 young guns firing at each other. It's not an armchair ride for Paul Voss, but he's just kind of hanging in there, and you know, let the 2 riders of Davila and Squire just do it. They're obviously kind of carried away with the you know, the race, and you know, just a bit of inexperience, as you say. So
they're riding on continental teams, aren't they? Of course. I mean, Paul Voss is riding on a pro continental team. Wiggins and co. and the bigger teams, they're essentially 2 divisions higher. And if you use a football analogy, and it's one that's often used, it's Premiership, you know, and League One, and it's or the 3rd division as it used to be. There's quite a big divide. So these riders are riding in they're riding in a steam company in a very good position, and sometimes I guess they can get carried away with the kind of position they're in. As we head to the back of the group, a noticeable difference in the pace. These riders just setting, well, just basically trying to get to the finish to fight another day. and look after their respective team leaders or fight for stage victories later in the race. Of course, this is only stage 3, still a long way to go. A couple of undulating stages, quite a hilly final stage, and of course another very difficult mountain stage to come on stage 6. And now Paul Voss joining the others in unzipping his jersey to the hilt right the way down. Again, we are getting a little bit of picture breakup here. The peloton now 1 minute 10, 9.2 kilometers to go. Again, as we head to the back, where there are open bits of road where there's not so much tree cover, we are going to get better pictures. So please do excuse the footage for the time being. We are going to get some breakup. We'll try to stay with these leaders for as long as we can. 10Ks to go for the leaders. Slightly different than what we've got on the board, so we'll have to bear with that. I suggest we go with the route boards rather than the one that are on the screen. So still 10 kilometers to go for our 3 leaders. And the gradient, again, shallow now, but it does kick up near the top. Ryan, so what are the riders facing now in the last 10 kilometers in relation to the gradient?
Well, at this moment in time, it kind of eases to, I say eases to, you know, an average of about 5%, but when it gets to about 5Ks to go, it kicks up to 7.4, and then further up the climb, it just 9.4 to, you know, 15-16% in the last, you know, 500 meters. The last kilometer or last kilometer and a half is very hard, and that's why Paul Voss is letting the young guns set the tempo. He just has to be there again all the time that Paul Voss is there. NetApp Enduro can just sit back and let the other teams do it, but it did look as if BMC did come to the front to inject the pace to try and set up Stettiner, but Bradley's obviously decided, well, you know, we want to keep a good pace. It just means that Bradley's feeling good, and this is sort of climb that will suit him. It's just the final bit when it gets really steep, but I think when we get into that part, Bradley could be on his own, and don't discount him for the stage.
Tour of California stage 3. We have 3 leaders out in front. These 3 leaders were part of a 7 or 8-man group that went away from the start. And remaining from that original breakaway is Paul Voss, the German riding on the NetApp Enduro team. Robbie Squire from James Hagens Berman, the American 24-year-old, and Luis Davia, the young Mexican national road race champion from Jelly Belly. And the chase is being led by Team Sky, riding in the service, of course, of Bradley Wiggins, who won the time trial in dominating fashion yesterday and looking very comfortable at the moment. 1 minute and 10 seconds the gap. These leaders did have 2.5 minutes at the foot of the climb. They're still working very well together, swapping turns at the front. These riders riding in very difficult conditions. Not only do they have an arduous 18-kilometer climb to face to the finish, they're riding in temperatures well in excess of 90 degrees, and we've seen them throughout the day making sure they're topping up their fluids levels. Domestique after domestique, we've seen dropping back into the race convoy, stuffing numerous bottles up their jerseys to bring back to their teammates and doling them out. It's been a constant merry-go-round of refueling and refueling all day long, and we've seen team helpers at the side of the road, even on this climb just a few kilometers ago, making sure riders have got enough on board. Vitally important stuff, and it's not something we can impress upon enough, really, Brian.
Yeah, I'm just looking now at the race situation. You can just see the neutral service is still behind. The motorbike com is there, but they pulled out the commissaire car, so it looks as if that's the referee car. It looks as if that gap is coming down a bit more now, and they're just pulling out neutral service. So I think that this gap is down to cost about 30 seconds now. Just have been really impressed with the Mexican champion, Luis Davila. He's only had one UCI race at 2.2 just last week, and that was the Tour of the Gila, where he finished second in the mountains competition, a very hilly race. So to come here and get the breakaway from the start and still be here at this moment in time, still willing to ride. He's only 22 years old, so it looks as if he's impressing a few people today with his efforts.
Of course, you can say similar things of Robbie Squire as well, a young rider on an American domestic team. This is their race. It's the biggest race of the season. They haven't had the same sort of preparation as riders like Paul Voss of the Pro Continental NetApp Enduro team, and of course, the programs that the other riders have in this field. All the World Tour teams have had remarkably, tough programs. So these riders riding absolutely out of their skin And there will be a few director sportives, Brian, no doubt, casting their eye upon the performances of these two young riders who are riding quite fearlessly and very aggressively. And it looks like an attack there from Squire. He's decided to go, puts it in a big gear, treads on it, gets a gap and sits down and powers himself away from the other two. And it looks like it's the Mexican Luis Davila who was trying to come across the gap. And for the time being, Paul Voss has been distanced.
Yeah, it was a big attack there by the young 24-year-old, and you know, was the under-23 American champion back in 2011. He rode for Chipotle, the development team, and then went to Italy, rode for Amore Vita and Ceramica Flamini Fondre as the Continental team. So he has had exposure, but it didn't work for him. He came back this year and rode for obviously the Jamis team, but looks impressive today, and looks as if he knows that in the past in this race, if you show well, the likes of Chad Haga and Lawson Craddock have shown well in this race, that there's opportunities to take the step up. And certainly these young riders today, Robbie Squire and Luis Davila, are trying to show the world what they can do.
Robbie Squire now turning quite a large gear, absolutely powering up this climb. Indifference, a different style behind. You can just see the figure of Luis Davila pedaling away in the white jersey of Mexican champion, trying to limit his losses as Robbie Squire powers up this climb. This climb very snaky in nature. It's quite wide. There's plenty of room for riders to move up if they wish, but it constantly changes direction and is ideal if riders want to get out of sight and out of mind. When you're chasing another rider, it's always easier when you have a fixed point in the road to try and ride yourself back to, as if it was some sort of carrot. But as we look down through the apex of that corner, we'd lost sight of the German rider, Paul Voss. He has been distanced following the attack by Robbie Squire. So riding absolutely out of his skin at the moment, to a very appreciative crowd. As we get higher up this climb, I'm no doubt there'll be more and more people at the side of the roads welcoming the Tour of California. Squire takes a quick look over his shoulder, and he probably realises now that Luis Davila has remade contact and has joined back up. So we now have two riders in front. Peloton now at 30 seconds. And unfortunately, Brian, looks like Paul Voss's brave ride is now over, and it won't be very long before he's back in the peloton.
Yeah, it was important. He was in the breakaway, so he's done his job. But I tell you what, these guys are going hammer and tongs.
This is like a boxing match. They're absolutely they're tearing shreds off each other.
What you can do, I can do better. You try and attack me, and I'll try and attack you.
It's good to see, though, isn't it? It's great to see.
Two young riders.
It's completely unformulaic. It's natural. What I can pretty much guarantee here, it doesn't appear these guys. Well, they're not riding to power, are they? They're just taking chunks out of each other and attacking and attacking. It's very refreshing. It's like the racing of old. So one knockout blow from Robbie Squire. He had this guy on the deck, and this guy's just counterpunched and launched himself up the road and is now back in the lead again. This is fantastic racing. Of course, there's still only 30 seconds in front of the bunch. That's still being led by Team Sky. And Bradley Wiggins himself has taken to the front. This is the first time we've seen the bunch in a couple of kilometres. A couple of eager fans running alongside, but look at Bradley Wiggins there, riding it in a veritable stately fashion, the head of affairs, the Olympic time trial champion, of course, Tour de France champion in that famous year when he won the Tour. He took out Paris-Nice, he took out Tour Romandy, he took out the Dauphiné as well, in a remarkable run of form.
Well, we did speculate about this, Matt, that he did have a kind of weakish team. When it came to the climb, he would have to take it up, and probably try and take it up in the last 3 kilometres, but we're somewhat quite away from that. So, you know, Bradley Wiggins has had to take it on his own, and, you know, he must feel confident enough and good enough to be able to do this. It's who's going to be able to stay with him, and there's plenty of opportunities for a stage win today for some of these guys behind.
Exactly. Bradley Wiggins, although he doesn't appear to have any teammates, they do seem to have fallen by the wayside. They put a lot of work in today. They've ridden on the front all day long to make sure that breakaway didn't get too far in front. They then brought the break to heel at the foot of this climb. We saw Josh Edmondson right out of his skin about halfway up this climb. I think I can see the other Brit, Adam Yates, in there. We think he could be a danger man too, but Bradley Wiggins essentially now, he's in control. He's riding a time trial, he's full of confidence off the back of a very, very good Paris-Roubaix. He's trained, he's lost weight, and you don't ride at the front of a bunch in the yellow jersey unless you are full of confidence.
I'm full of confidence, but anything can happen. We're not going to wish it on Bradley Wiggins, but that's why it's important to have a teammate as close to you as possible, because if there's a puncture, you've got to remember you have to take it off the neutral service motorbike. The team's car will not be behind this group, so that's why you always try and have someone round about you, either jump on his bike or get a wheel change. And it's we don't wish it on anybody, but he is slightly exposed if he does have any kind of mechanical mishap. But it does look as if he is stretching the field out, and it's going to be a very entertaining last kind of 5-6 kilometres. But great effort here by the Mexican champion, the young 22-year-old from Jelly Belly, and that's Luis Davila.
He's ridden very well. Bear in mind he's ridden this climb extremely aggressively, but of course for the previous 100 miles he's been riding through and off in really hot, difficult conditions. So a superb ride by the young Mexican, but I don't think it's going to be too long until he's absorbed by the peloton as he looks over his shoulder. But Bradley Wiggins still setting a ferocious tempo on the front. But look how still he is on his bike. He is almost majestic on a bike. He's so composed, pedals a bike so fluidly. It's he sits on a bike as if the bike is part of him. You know, some people look very good on a bike. Other riders look as if the bike is distinctly separate. But you know, the bike looks as if it's a part of him.
Just looking to see who's sitting behind. See the BMC rider. I know that the Cannondale rider sitting in third place is George Bennett. So that's why obviously Cannondale were trying to set him up. But it's a brave effort by the riders in front. Obviously Robbie Squire from Jamis has already been brought back, and Bradley Wiggins is just about to catch the last of the breakaway riders, Luis Davila, the Jelly Belly rider, the young 22-year-old from Mexico.
Very brave ride by Luis Davila of Jelly Belly, soon to be absorbed. And now will he try and stay in the group? I've no doubt he will. Very, very brave ride from him. 5.4 kilometers to go. Stage 3 of the Tour of California, taking us up the slopes of Mount Diablo in the Mount Diablo State Park. We did have a break with 8 riders, which was reduced to 7, which then went down to 3, and the last of those escapees has now been brought to heel by Bradley Wiggins himself, sat on the front of the bunch in the yellow jersey, and the last rider to succumb to that pressure was Luis Davila from Jelly Belly, the Mexican road race champion. But all the bunch, well, the bunch now has been whittled down. We can see one of the groups further down the slopes. It looks like Taylor Phinney there. Team Sky ridden on the front of the peloton all day long.
It looks as if he's on a Sunday run.
His shoulders are hardly moving. You could probably balance a cup of tea on his shoulders there and it wouldn't spill. Very impressive display.
He's just riding up Sacalobra in Mallorca, which is on his doorstep where he lives now. He lives in Port Palenza most of the time. But the funny thing is, it's not funny for the rest of them riding behind him, but they're all in one line. Normally when you get somebody riding a tempo, as you know, Matt, it's slightly bunched, but everybody's in one line, so the pace is really up.
It certainly is. He's setting a quite ferocious pace. It looks like Machado's also there. It looks like Adam Yates is there. It looks like Bush is also there. So all the main contenders, Stettin is also there, under a little bit of pressure. As we said, in 20 kilometres, he lost 2.5 minutes to Bradley Wiggins. But what a display by Wiggins at the moment. Nobody can attack on this sort of gradient at this sort of speed. He'll be putting out somewhere in the region of 440, 450 watts. That's the kind of power he can ride at. Very confident, hardly moving at all. All the other riders rocking and rolling out of the saddle, while Bradley pedals incredibly a lower gear than everybody else as well. Looks absolutely in control at the moment, and I'm just wondering when we're going to see these attacks. We do know that the gradient does kick up towards the end, and I do think that's where we are going to see some attacks, but who it's going to come from, we don't know. Because at the moment, Bradley Wiggins is putting these riders in all sorts of difficulty. One by one, they are dropping out the back of what is now quite a select group.
You just see Orica Green Edge on the right-hand side, just sitting, you can just see the white jersey there. And they are looking after Adam Yates, the young man from Britain who won the Tour of Turkey recently, so a fantastic result for him, and he's just sitting in about 5th place at this moment in time. So a very small select group, and Bradley Wiggins still setting a very good tempo.
It's a good aerial shot there to help us pick out some of the other riders that could pose a threat to Bradley Wiggins. but the kilometres are ticking by. I did count, if my eyesight's any good, of at least 4 Garmin Sharp riders, and I would imagine they would be, although we'll get confirmation soon. Acevedo, Danielson, Dennis, and one other. Could be Phil Game, we don't know, but it did look like the figure of Danielson and Acevedo, very distinctive styles, and of course Rowan Dennis, a great rider yesterday, and sitting second overall in the classification. Luke conceding 44 seconds to Bradley Wiggins. I'll just run my finger down the classification for you. First overall, of course, is Bradley, sat at the front. Rowan Dennis in second at 44 seconds. And then we have, well, the virtual classification. Thiago Machado at 1:19, Lawson Craddock's there too. David de la Cruz is there. Damien Howson from Australia is also there. Emma Zubeldia, the Spaniard, the veteran Spaniard riding on Trek Factory Racing, could be a bit of a dark horse for the stage today. Did a relatively good time trial yesterday, lost a couple of minutes, but no attacks as yet. Bradley Wiggins still setting this rhythm. It doesn't look as if he's in any difficulty, not grimacing too much, looks pretty cool. His face very different to the effort that he was putting in yesterday. Just breathing in nice and smoothly, gulping in the air. But yesterday his face contorted as he pushed as hard as he could. And what a ride it was yesterday, Brian. What a display of time trialling. But nobody still, as the kilometres tick by, is attacking. This pace is just too high.
Yeah, it's too high, and a lot of them are waiting for it inside the last 3 kilometres. They know it's going to be very difficult. I can see that Lawson Craddock is also here. He finished 7th in this stage last year, and he's got the white and green jersey on, sitting I think about 4th from the front. So we've got Bradley Wiggins, one of the riders from BMC. I'm not too sure if that's Moynard, but the rider from Cannondale is George Bennett. Then we've got Lawson Craddock, Lawrence Tendam from Belkin up towards the front as well. So they're just sitting and waiting to pounce. Also one of the riders from the Optum team, also up near the front. And there's a mixture, and hopefully we'll be able to pick more riders out. Some riders in there for Trek Factory Racing as well.
Yeah, Lawrence Tendam did actually contact him after yesterday's crash. He crashed into another rider just after the finish line, and is badly bruised. That's why you'll see he's got bandages on his knees. He's sitting in.
Stettin in second place.
Yeah, Stettin in second. So Tendam, had a very good Tour de France last year. Previously finished 8th on general classification in the Vuelta a España, and 13th last year overall in the Tour de France. Took a stage last year of the in 2008, sorry, of the Criterium International. So one of the most experienced riders in this select group, and it's gradually being even more thinned out. There's riders going out the back now. You can see there are a couple of riders absolutely on the rivet, on the tips of the saddle. Bradley Wiggins setting an absolutely ferocious pace. Takes a glance over his shoulder. When you round one of the hairpins, it's an opportunity to look over your shoulder. You can see the riders behind. Look at their faces. And now we have the first of the attacks coming from one of the riders from the Optum team, by the looks of things. We'll get the number for in a moment, but a brave attack.
Carter Jones, it could be from the Optum team. So he's the first to attack as we get close to the kind of difficult part of this climb, and it just gets harder and harder all the way to the top.
Yeah, the gradient really starts to kick up. Last year's stage, of course, won by Leopold Koenig, who went on to later win a stage of the Vuelta a España as well, on a similar mountaintop finish. He's not here this year, so will be another victor on this very difficult climb. Lots of fans out on the side of the road, but his jersey unzipped. Very hot conditions, over 90 degrees, baking heat. Bradley Wiggins didn't react at all to that. All he'll do now is just reel him in, slowly but surely. He won't change his pace, he'll just keep it exactly the same. All other riders can rely on is an explosive surge and then try and hold it. It's very doubtful this rider can hold the same sort of power that Bradley Wiggins is putting out at the moment. .3 miles to go of stage 3 of the Tour of California, and it's Carter Jones, who won the King of the Mountains in last year's Tour of California, so he'll know this climb very well, who has attacked the group, being led by the yellow jersey, Bradley Wiggins. The 8-man breakaway that has dominated the day were brought to heel finally by Team Sky. Bradley Wiggins' teammates have gradually dropped by the wayside after working very hard for him all day long. But now Carter Jones has decided to attack. There's not long to go now, but Bradley Wiggins has ridden for the last 3 or 4 kilometres at the head of affairs. Peter Stettiner, number 1 from BMC, the American favourite and the leader of BMC on his wheel. Other riders in the mix include Umar Zelbidia, Rowan Dennis, 2nd overall, Acevedo, who was 3rd overall last year, and another rider loses contact under the pressure being applied by Bradley Wiggins at the front, hardly moving at all. Such is his pace. Lawrence Dentam is also there. We can confirm that Acevedo is indeed there, but this is incredible. Quality riders are now dropping out the back, and Bradley Wiggins is hardly moving at all.
Yeah, Zubeldia now gone, an experienced rider from Trek Factory Racing, but this man is on form, Carter Jones, and he won the Tour of the Gila just last week, so very good rider. Obviously won in the Tour, the King of the Mountains last year in the Tour of California. Good form at this moment, and he looks good out the saddle, tapping away at a very good rhythm here, but he's looking around. You can still see the yellow jersey at the front, and you know, one by one they're dropping off the back here. We still haven't got to the kind of hardest part of this climb. So again, only about 10 or 12 riders now in contention. And when Bradley came to the front with no other teammates, with about 6-7 k's to go, he's been at the front the whole way. He's such a great rider at doing this, just riding within himself all the way up this climb. He's done it in the time trial. We know he's on great form. From Paris-Roubaix, he's dropped 5 kilograms, so this is a great test for him, and it's a show of strength. He really wants to make the Tour de France team, and it's saying to everybody that I want in the team. I'm very capable of being in the team, and I want to go into the team, especially when it starts in Yorkshire.
Well, after a very difficult season last year, he's certainly come back. Bradley Wiggins, of course, took the Tour of Britain at the back end of last year, and then a very well-deserved silver medal in the World Time Trial Championships. Second, of course, not to Bradley Wiggins, to Tony Martin, the German. But again, without even a glance, he rides straight past Carter Jones. Didn't even nod at him, just rode at his own pace. It's as if Bradley Wiggins is riding this climb on his own, regardless of what anybody else wants to do. He's just certainly doing his own thing, and he is starting to grimace a bit now, starting to feel the pain as the gradient kicks up. Gripping those bars, Stettiner still stuck to his wheel. He hasn't moved off Bradley Wiggins' wheel for the whole of this climb. And it looks like Craddock there also for Giant Shimano in the black and the white jersey. Lawrence Tendam is still there in the green and black jersey. The Dutch rider, 15th overall last year in the Tour de France, a very classy rider indeed. And that's a picture of Lars Baum out the back. So we're getting some picture breakup here. So we'll head back to the helicopter view. Bradley Wiggins still turning a noticeably lower gear than the rest of the riders that he's with. That track souplesse certainly has not deserted him. Rock steady, on the hoods, tapping away. You have the power meter in front of him. He knows exactly what he can and he can't do, and that's why he doesn't react when he doesn't think he needs to. He's also got a good time buffer on 2nd overall, which is Rowan Dennis, 44 seconds. And as the kilometres tick by, it means that there's less and less road for the other riders to put any time at all into Bradley Wiggins, and there's a good view of the back. The riders rocking and rolling, looking across at each other. What can we do is what they're thinking probably. Adam Yates there, number 57, out of the saddle. Very classy young British rider with a very bright future ahead of him. Took a stage and the overall of the recent Tour of Turkey and took that victory on a hilltop finish. Number 31 there, Matthew Bush, 6th overall last year in this race, and was top 10 on this particular stage. He's going to know this climb very, very well, and it's now that the gradient will really start to bite. Bradley Wiggins, I've not seen him, Brian, get out of the saddle at all on this climb. He's just doing his own thing, setting this relentless rhythm, and there goes the first attack, and it's Acevedo.
Yeah, Acevedo did this last year and finished 2nd in the stage, but Bradley Wiggins is just going to try and bring him back. It does look as if Bradley wants to win the stage today, and he wants to pay back his team for riding tremendously well so far. He looks in awesome form. Also in this front group is Stettiner from BMC. It just looks, I tell you what, it's just so easy. Lawson Craddock finished 7th in this stage last year. He knows the stage, sitting in the white and green jersey just behind Bradley Wiggins. Also in this group, we've mentioned Tendam, Carter Jones for Optum in the orange helmet. You've also got Chavez and Yates of Orica, Machado of NetApp Endura, and Boucher, I think, is still in here for Trek Factory Racing.
A very select group we have now. 1.4 kilometres to go. It's actually not 1.4 kilometres to go. That looks as if it's the red kite, if I'm not mistaken, Brian. The graphics are slightly wrong, so we're into the final kilometre.
And it kicks up 15-16% very, very soon. You can just see Bradley Wiggins giving it full pelt in the front. Still a stage up for grabs today. Rowan Dennis is also in here for Garmisch. I think he's just moving up now. He realises that he has to be as close to Bradley Wiggins as possible and comes up to second place.
Rowan Dennis in second place. Adam Yates, the young British rider, just moving up on the outside, but Acevedo did go. And when he went, it was for the first time I saw Bradley Wiggins react. He didn't get out of the saddle, but what he noticeably did was increase the tempo. He's got a grimace on his face now as he presses on as hard as he can. Not long to go now. He rounds the final. Look at the face of Bradley Wiggins now. Tapping along exactly the same rhythm. Nobody can do anything at all. The road does in a few moments kick up. We've got half a mile to go. Tendam out of the saddle just to the right of your picture. Adam Yates still there. This is going to be a very interesting finale. Can anybody, with 500 metres to go, do anything about a rampaging Bradley Wiggins? Certainly at the moment, at the top of his game for Team Sky. He takes a glance over his shoulder.
This is motor pacing uphill for everybody else. It's Adam Yates goes on the right-hand side, is it? Is it Chavez?
It's Yates, it looks like Yates. So Adam Yates has gone. And that was quite the distinctive figure of Adam Yates. Yep. Who has gone with 400 metres to go. What a ride by the Brit. Tapping out a rhythm up the cleat. He went at a key moment. He came out of the slipstream of Bradley Wiggins. A fantastic ride by the young Brit with 200 metres to go. You can see the gradient biting now.
Dennis is coming.
Dennis is on is closing the gap on Adam Yates. Has he gone too early? It looks like he has. It looks Rowan Dennis is out of the saddle. He fell off on the first stage. A remarkable time trial comeback, finished second to Bradley Wiggins. You can see he's bandaged, battle-scarred, but unbowed. This is an absolutely remarkable ride by the Australian on the Garmin Shark team to take the victory atop Mount Diablo. Second in the time trial, crashed on stage one, his jersey unzipped. He punches the air with delight. Tiago Machado, it looks like, took second place. Looks like Craddock in third place. But what a ride by Rowan Dennis. The young Australian, 23 years of age, timed it perfectly. Adam Yates, the young Australian riding for Orica Green Edge, took his chance early, but was foiled by the gradient in the last couple of 100 metres. But what a ride here by Bradley Wiggins. He's going to have kept that yellow jersey, but fair play to Rowan Dennis. He's eaten into the lead there. Fantastic stuff. So, Rowan Dennis, our winner atop Mount Diablo today, gasping in the air, 93, 94 degrees, and that's why his jersey's unzipped. I don't think Garmin Sharp are going to be too worried about the sponsorship there, but Bradley Wiggins still will be in yellow. But I think Rowan Dennis took about 10 or 15 seconds there from Bradley Wiggins, maybe 20 seconds.
Yeah,
but a very good bit of timing there.
But Bradley Wiggins looked awesome in that climb. You can just see he is in top form after the time trial yesterday. But hats off to Rowan Dennis as well. Was the man closest to him in the time trial yesterday after falling off in the first stage, coming back, having road rash, having a bad shoulder, coming back. And in this 15-16% climb, having a bad shoulder and going. Unfortunately for Adam Yates, he did go early. He didn't know the climb, but it was a great effort by him. But Bradley's definitely lost a bit of time. I would say nearer 20 seconds, maybe slightly more, but a huge performance there by Rowan Dennis.
Not yet. I believe it was Lawson Craddock.
It's Rowan Dennis, the 23-year-old Australian riding for Garmin Sharp, who takes the victory in the most difficult of conditions here at the Tour of California on stage 3. The bunch was all together with 500 metres to go. Bradley Wiggins has essentially driven the bunch for the vast majority of the climb. His Team Sky team drove and brought